All right, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum, shalom. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Doc and the Radical program today. And we are live with our part two of the program on Dr. King. Today's title is Dr. King, His Life and Death, the Way Forward for Black America. Peace and blessings, Doc. How you doing?
I'm good, brother. How are you today?
Yes, sir. Doing pretty good. All right. So last week we talked about Dr. King and a few of his accomplishments and a few of the people that rocked with him in their philosophy, trying to improve on the conditions that Black people face every day here in America. We talked about his nonviolent situation, his nonviolent stance, that actually didn't come from Gandhi, that he actually was told about it by Bernard Rustin. Beard Rustin, one of his advisors. Now, we want to also welcome Twin Pyramid to the program. Peace and blessings, Twin. I'm glad you're here. When we're looking at King, Doc, did he mean more to America or more to Black people? What's your thoughts on that?
Most certainly more to Black people. There's no doubt. Yet at the exact same time that I say that King means more to Black people, let's be very clear on this, that everybody didn't love King. Everybody that was Black didn't love King. It's only after King's death that a lot of his opponents even, now they're fawning over King and they're loving King. Many people thought King was a troublemaker who would come into cities, stir some things up, and then leave himself. So, but if you ask me who he meant more to, is definitely Black America, most definitely. This embrace of King, especially from ardent racists and segregationists within the Republican Party, was seizing on that phrase of, a colorblind society. It's politically advantageous. They didn't love King then, and they don't love him now.
All right, awesome. And we want to welcome Mr. Dofi to the program. Peace and blessings, bro. Glad you made it. Looks like Mr. Dofi got the flu, but he's still in the house. All right. Good job, soldier. We hope that you feel better. Definitely. We want to welcome Brother Willie Rivers to the program. Peace and blessings, Brother Willie. It's glad that you're here with us. All right. So, Doc, now you talked about the Republicans not being one of King's friends, but were the Democrats his friends in reality?
No, I would argue no. You have to remember that Dr. King is very clear on what winning is with the civil rights movement. And he talks about winning occurring in two stages. The first stage was to secure equality on the law books of America. And that's achieved for the first time for Black folk with the 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act. And keep in mind, we're going to have another in 68, another act enacted on so-called Black folk. But neither side really wanted to honor the second stage of what King was talking about, with the first stage being the securing of equality on the law books of America. The second stage was the exercise of that equality. And one has to really ask themselves, think about the best white folk that you know, and then ask yourself this question: would those white folk give up their jobs for that company to be integrated? The answer to that is no, because within capitalist America, everybody's going to have to work, especially if they want to flourish. So this nation has never really tried the second part, which is the exercise of equality, activating all of these laws, the need to apply the law that's in existence. We haven't done that. And everyone knows that we haven't done it if they're being truthful. But we get confused in regards to the consequences of Black oppression and the should be natural responsibility of this nation to do something special for Black folk. King says it in Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? King says, listen, it would seem to me that a nation that has done something specifically against the Black man would not have a problem with doing something for the Black man, at least for a period of time. And that's basically a call for affirmative action, a form of reparations.
And so your King was for reparations.
Most certainly.
Now, well, okay, so let's put that in today's time. Would he be for reparations for all Black people that's in America, or for reparations for Black people who were ancestors were in chattel slavery here in America? How would he?
Well, King's certainly talking about those whose ancestors were the victims of chattel slavery. You know, he's very clear that this government and this nation, this society, has been working against their interests. This has been state-sanctioned oppression. The U.S. government is complicit in this crime. Make no mistake about it. So it's on the U.S. government and these various business interests that benefited from the exploitation of Black labor to step forward and to do something significant for Black folk.
Okay. And I want to make sure that we welcome Christina Williams to the program. Peace and blessings, sister. We're glad that you're here with us. And again, everybody, our topic is Dr. King, his life and death, the way forward for Black America. Understanding who Dr. King really was, what his whole system was about, what his ideology was about. Why was he killed? Was he killed because he was working on behalf of Black folk, or was he killed because he started poking his nose into white folk business, where they said he shouldn't have had his nose? You know, we talked about Ella Baker as one of the, I would say, chiefs behind him in the terms of strategy of how to get this and how to get that. And we're going to look at her a little bit more today. We're also going to hear from Bernard Rustin today about whether the civil rights movement was successful or was it a failure. Could those same tactics work today? We're going to see what he says about that. Doc, there's like two phases of Dr. King. I would say an Old Testament and a New Testament. Old Testament King to me was more of a, you know, we got to work it together and all this, that, and the other. And then the New Testament King was learning that, A, everything ain't as kosher as we deem it to be. Maybe we need to wait on this integration because the house is burning. To make a shift as big as that, from let's integrate and make it happen to the house is burning, that's a drastic shift. What came new to King's eyes that would lead him to say, the house is burning?
You know, I think it's multiple things. And let's be very clear about King. What King is saying in the public sphere isn't the totality of his understanding of America. If you go back and you read, King did a sermon, Paul's letter to American Christians, where he's talking about all these technological advancements, but ultimately in the end, these technological advancements have made you less human, have made you less feeling. Um, King believed at a certain point in the goodness of white folk. And I believe that that begins to be eroded. I would almost argue moments after he walked off of that stage, really before he walked onto the stage at the March on Washington. Most people don't understand. You know, we talk about King being so central to the civil rights movement, but the figure that you really should look at if you want to understand the civil rights movement is Asa Philip Randolph, the labor leader. You got to remember the March on Washington movement in 41 was aimed at getting jobs. The March on Washington in 63 was aimed at getting jobs. And one can only imagine how angered and disappointed King must have been when the white folks and the Jews threatened to pull out of the March on Washington, the 63 march, the night before. Okay. They were going to leave. Okay. And it's Randolph who goes and speaks to the leaders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, most notably Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, H. Rep. Brown, James Foreman. They were going to issue a scathing denouncement of JFK. Okay. And the whites and the Jews said, if they do that, we won't participate in the march. So you have these things that are going on almost perpetually behind the scenes that most people don't know about. So even King's performance, and I call it a performance, a riff, because it wasn't new. The legendary story is that Mahalia Jackson, who was up there with King, Mahalia Jackson is the one that you can hear if you listen very closely saying, go ahead, Martin, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream. And King goes into that familiar riff that unfortunately has overshadowed his entire life, his entire existence. King is losing faith early because he sees the anger written across, as he put it, written across many Southern sheriffs' face. So that whole idea of there being one thing that changed him, no, it's a host of things that changed King. King doesn't have the same naivete about this nation in 63 that he had in 56, 55. And he damn sure ain't got the same thing in 67, 68. Okay, because there are several things that happen. And one of them is King gave a speech in April 4th, 1967, at the Riverside Baptist Church, titled, I Ain't Gonna Study War No More, where he denounces the Vietnam War. Well, the Vietnam War is LBJ's war, King's protection. That's why you can't touch King, okay, because of LBJ. But in many ways, that sermon was King biting the hand that fed him and protected him. And he would ultimately be killed on, what's the date? April 4th, 1968, a year to the date that he denounced America's involvement in the Vietnam War. King is killed a year to the date of that. That's not accidental.
Mm. So he was killed for his stance on the war. Um, so I,
King is talking about the money. He's talking about the money that is being used in the American wartime machine. He's messing with these white folk money, and King is bringing forth an issue that we talking about to this very day. Where the hell did that money to subsidize the Ukraine? Where did that money come from?
Mhm.
And if you got that money, why wasn't that money used? And let's be fair about it. Why wasn't that money used to help wartime veterans? Why are we around here talking about wounded warriors, where American people had to put money into a pot to take care of what? Their soldiers.
Mm.
You're talking about people's money. It's a shell game. They go into a nation, they destroy that nation. Okay. And then amazingly, there's about 3 or 4 companies that are associated with some high ranking official who have the quote unquote clearance to go in there and rebuild it. So the US government, look at what Halliburton did with Dick Cheney. Halliburton goes in to rebuild the nation that the administration that Dick Cheney works for destroyed. It's a shell game. King is talking about poverty. King is talking about poor people. There's a lot of questions that some people don't want to be asked. The killing of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a U.S. government sanctioned killing, period.
Mm. Mm. Awesome. I want to take the time out to welcome Earth Angel 1105 Remix to the program. Peace and blessings, Queen. Welcome. We want to welcome Mayat to the program. Peace and blessings, Queen. Welcome. We want to welcome Tranquil to the program. Peace and blessings. Welcome, Tranquil. Let's see, is anybody? MDP, welcome to the program. Peace and blessings. All right, I think I got everybody. Yep, I think I got everybody. So I want to make sure we do understand, Doc. Do you think Ella Baker and Rustin agreed with King's departure from civil rights to get into the war business, to start talking and going that way? Because a lot of pastors wouldn't even let him speak in his church no more, in their churches, once he made that stand.
Mm-hmm. I can't speak with authority on what Rustin or Baker felt. I don't know what they felt. If you're asking me to project, I know that Rustin would have an international mind, and Rustin would understand that large issue of poverty, capitalism, socialism. Baker, I mean, like I said, I can't speak with authority. I don't have a quote of Baker talking about that very thing. But what I will say about Baker is that Baker recognized that this was a mystical, magical moment. That this was a moment where the people were organized, the people were mobilized. And it's hard for me to imagine a world where Ella Baker would not support a movement to save poor men, women, and children. She's an activist. She's an organizer. So I believe that they would have both been with them, but I can't give you a quote.
Mm. Do you think now, looking back at it, if he would not have deviated into the war situation, do you think the Poor People's Campaign would have been successful?
No.
Why?
They would have met, they would have marched. They still went to DC and held the march. But you're talking about a shifting of economic resources in a capitalist nation, those who hold power don't give a damn about poor people suffering. They don't care nothing about no kids not having enough to eat. This is about money. It's a unabashed, unrestrained pursuit of economic resources. And they're not giving that up. It's kind of like slavery. John Brown says it best. He says, you're never going to be able to win a debate to moralize these people into giving up their cash cows. That type of logic doesn't exist. Okay? Do you think that Donald Trump cares about people starving? Not enough to give his money up. You know, that's an issue. That's an issue. You know, Dr. King said this, that it has been his experience that those who have the most power had at least morality. And those who are the most moral had at least political and economic power.
Wow. Do you think Dr. King was what's the right word I want to say? Delusional in his quest for equality?
No, as a Christian, I would call him unabashedly optimistic.
Do you see a point? Well, do you see a point that he would have achieved? So, well, then I guess your answer to that would be no. That there wasn't going to be a point that he would have achieved his success.
No, you're talking about capitalist America, and most people, and they use it as a derisive comment, a maligning of Dr. King, in saying, you know, well, King was a communist. King was a socialist. That's their way of talking about King believed in economic equality. That a hard day's work deserved a good day's pay. You know, he's maligned to this day as being a socialist or a communist. And that lets you know that when you're talking about that money, you know, and think about it this way. You have more populace, meaning working class and poor white men and women supporting Donald Trump, who is a multi-millionaire and has really exploited them often. They support him and talk about American individualism because they hope against all rational thought that one day their ship gonna come in and they're gonna be the ones on top. It ain't gonna never fucking happen, but they hold out hope for that.
Earth Angel makes a good comment, and I want to look at that, where she says it's biblical, good versus evil. The earth has been given to the wicked for a time. By King being a minister of the gospel, but what he wasn't aware. I mean, well, he was aware because he's he taught this. So my thing is, how can you be a minister of the gospel but yet denying the realities that that come from the biblical text when dealing with the situation?
Because even with the biblical text, good triumphs over evil in the end. And if you just keep going, God is going to intercede. You know, the great Dottie Peoples song that my mother loved. He's an on-time God. Yes, he is. He may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time. He's an on-time God. Yes, he is. In many ways, that is the background music for the Christian struggle. And King is most certainly a believer.
And Mr. Adolfi say, well, the same way he can be a pastor and have affairs with lots of women. But Doc,
You see what that flu do to my brother's brain. Get him talking about family business out in the public. You know what I'm saying? That brother then took some NyQuil, and now he'll be getting ready like that drunk uncle that keeps telling people, you know, that ain't your daddy.
You know, should we, and you know, knowing that we all are men, you know, we're human beings. Should we have that? Should we have that leniency to say, well, you know, I can understand a little play on the side here, or you know, what's your thoughts on that, Doc? Come on now.
My thoughts on what? You didn't ask me nothing. You know what I'm saying? You didn't ask nothing. You issued a statement, and you know what I'm saying? And that's how the devil gets you. You know, you get the whisper, and he ain't really ask a question. He just saying something to you. Oh, come on, brother. You know how it is. Oh, I don't know how it is.
You know, should they have the option or the right to have the little extra piece while they out there traveling, trying to handle the business?
No, because God said no. However, none of us are, you know, we all gonna fall short, you know. But the answer to that is no. You know, and the answer has to be no. And when King, if you were to ask King that, he would say no. Yet at the exact same time, he's doing it. The only contradiction is that there are no contradictions.
Wow. You know, look at Christina Williams. She says the people, white, who have the ability to eliminate racism, white supremacy, don't have the will. And the people, non-white, who have the will to eliminate it, don't have the ability. Neely Fuller, Jr.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be truthful?
Well, certainly. Well, certainly that goes back to what I just said. When King is talking about, it has been his experience that those who have all the power don't have any morality. And those who have the morality quite simply don't have the power. So yeah, that Neely Fuller is completely correct, right and exact.
Okay. And Christine says that is the sexual relationship.
I'm gonna put Christine Williams in the same category as Earth Angel in a little bit with these hard questions.
Is the sexual relationship outside of marriage a Christian behavior or a human relationship?
Both of them. I mean, I refuse. See, there we go. There goes Earth Angel. See, it don't do to praise them, do it? You acknowledge them and look at how they come up. Okay, it don't do to praise them. You know, it's one of those things where, come on, man, we all know that we're born in sin and that the flesh is weak. You know, it's just what it is. The flesh is weak, and there's no getting around that. You're human. You know, Elaine Brown said it this way, former head of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. She says, yeah, they always talk about Dr. King having an affair the night before he was killed. She says, I hope it was good. Look at my eye. See, you, my God. See, that's what I'm talking about. See, I don't care. I don't care where you go. Okay, you'll never find anything like black people. You go to a distant galaxy, they ain't got nothing like black folk. Nothing at all. See, nothing at all.
Yeah, Doctor, you sound like you a little under the weather yourself.
Yeah, man. I was in Ohio. You know, it was like 20 below there. That's a bad. Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that's a bad part of the planet Earth. We're near there, and I agree with that.
All right. Well, we're going to go into our first video and look at some of the price that King paid and come back and talk about it.
Then we started our struggle together. Things were going well for the first few days, but then about 10 or 15 days later, after the white people in Montgomery knew that we meant business, they started doing some nasty things. They started making nasty telephone calls and came to the point that some days more than 40 telephone calls would come in, threatening my life, the life of my family, the life of my children. I took it for a while in a strong manner, but I never will forget one night very late. It was around midnight. And you can have some strange experiences at midnight. I had been out meeting with the steering committee all that night. And I came home. My wife was in the bed, and I immediately crawled into bed to get some rest, to get up early the next morning to try to keep things going. And immediately, the telephone started ringing, and I picked it up. On the other end was an ugly voice. That voice said to me in substance, "Nigger, we are tired of you and your mess now. And if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, you're gonna blow your brains out and blow up your house." I'd heard these things before, but for some reason that night it got to me. I turned over and I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was frustrated, bewildered. Then I got up and went back to the kitchen and I started warming some coffee, thinking that coffee would give me a little relief. Then I started thinking about many things. I pulled back on the theology and philosophy that I had just studied in the universities, trying to give philosophical and theological reasons for the existence and the reality of sin and evil, but the answer didn't quite come there. I sat there and thought about a beautiful little daughter who had just been born about a month earlier. We have 4 children now, but we only had 1 then. She was the darling of my life. I'd come in night after night and see that little gentle smile. And I sat at that table thinking about that little girl and thinking about the fact that she could be taken away from any minute. I started thinking about a dedicated, devoted, and loyal wife who was over there asleep. She could be taken from me, I could be taken from her. And I got to the point that I couldn't take it any longer. I was weak. And something said to me, you can't call on Daddy now. He's up in Atlanta 175 miles away. You can't even call on Mama now. You got to call on that something and that person that your daddy used to tell you about. That power that can make a way out of no way. I discovered then that religion had to become real to me, and I had to know God for myself. And I bowed down over that cup of coffee. I never will forget it. Oh, yes, I prayed a prayer, and I prayed out loud that night. I said, Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause that we represent is right. But Lord, I must confess that I'm weak now, I'm faltering, I'm losing my courage. It seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world. I tell you, I've seen the lightning flash. I've heard the thunder roll. I've felt sin breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul. But I heard the voice of Jesus saying still to fight on. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. No, never alone. No, never alone. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. Sometimes I feel discouraged. And I don't mind telling you this morning that sometimes I feel discouraged. I felt discouraged in Chicago. As I moved through Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama, I feel discouraged. Living every day under the threat of death, I feel discouraged sometimes. Living every day under extensive criticism, even from Negroes, I feel discouraged sometimes. Yes, sometimes I feel discouraged and feel my works in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. God bless you.
All right, so that was Dr. King. Yes, he was 39, Earth Angel, when he was murdered. A Knock at Midnight. And honestly, that's one of my favorite pieces to listen to, because it talks about what he has to go through, being the front man, being the leader. And to be very honest, Doc, I couldn't do that. I ain't marching up no damn side of no highway. I ain't carrying no goddamn sign. I'm a man. I just couldn't. That's not my fucking cup of tea. My thing is, we gonna whoop your ass and let it be done. If y'all can beat us and break us, then fuck it. But we not marching. We ain't trying to be a brother lover. None of that shit, you know. So I couldn't be the man King was. I couldn't do that, you know. I remember taking my oldest son, not my oldest, my next oldest, to Atlanta, and we went to the King's home, and we went to the King Center. And I asked him as we were walking away, getting back in the car, I said, now that you done learned about our brother, could you be with him back that day? And he said, nah, Pop, I couldn't do that. I ain't got it like that. I couldn't do it. I don't understand. Daddy, why would he do that? And I ain't have an answer for him. Because in my mind, that don't make sense. It don't make sense. So Doc, break it down. What was it that allowed him to put his family through that, for him to go through that, and not turn it away and walk away and say, fuck that? You know, what was it?
You know, I don't think that it occurred that way, that he fully factored in what it was going to be like as he did this. There's a element of naivete that one finds with Dr. King. You got to remember, when he's leaving a Union Theological Seminary, his father tells him to come home to Atlanta. You can learn to be a pastor under me. King doesn't know what he's stepping into, to be honest with you. So to think that he had factored in that these people are going to try and kill or harm my children, he's not there at the very beginning. He becomes a parent. That's who he's dealing with, but not at the very beginning. However, what King is doing, King understands very well, and you can talk about the British colonization of India. British soldiers would later say, because they beat the Indians all day, and they would say we were literally exhausted almost to death. The Indians outnumbered the British. King understands, and Baird Rustin, he always doubles down on this, that numbers-wise, we can't fight that type of war. If we go head up with them, we're going to be slaughtered. You need allies, you need friends. You need people who can step in and can every way help your cause. That's why King is causing all of these very public, nonviolent confrontations. He's trying to show the world, not just non-Southern parts of this nation, but the world, what white folk are actually like in the South. And when you say a picture's worth 1,000 words, one has to question, how much is video worth? It's outsiders who are going to begin to exert pressure on the South. We have this great story of some businessmen from Montgomery, Alabama. They were going overseas trying to get a company to come in. And the decision makers for the company made the question. They asked them, what's going on in your city? Why are people being beaten like that? And they ultimately lost that business. So you have to, and the Haitian Mayat, the numbers, think about the numbers. Black folk in America, numbers wise, we don't have it. And then the fact that those numbers that you're looking at are even lessened because many of your best fighters are actually fighting in the U.S. military. So King is really in many ways executing a brilliant long-term propaganda campaign where he's speaking to non-Southern white folk. Look at this. Now you got to decide, what is your moral compass? Do you think that this is right? Is this what this nation is supposed to be about? And if you come up with, no, it's not, well, then you got some choices and some decisions to make. in regards to how we're going to go forward. King is doing a great job of getting the benefit of the doubt from huge segments of America. And I yield, brother.
Mm. Doc, I want to take up, I think it's Christine Williams' question or statement, where she says that Christianity teaches nonviolence. And then Mr. Adolphe turns around and says, Christine, it also teaches an eye for an eye. That's not nonviolence. And then she responds, well, turn the other cheek. So here you have the book, and you have seemed like one message saying one thing and another message saying something totally different.
Yeah.
Can you?
You would have to put them within their context. When the Lord's talking about, turn the other cheek. If someone, hits you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. One of the things about Scripture that I can tell you without any reservation is there's a justification for everything that you want to do to be found in that Bible. It's all based upon what it is that you want to do, what you want to extenuate. So you're going to find contradictory. You're going to find, some would argue, contradictory images of even the Christ figure. Because on one hand, he's talking about peace and long suffering. Another moment, he's up in the temple, wreaking havoc, whooping ass. So I believe that all of those perspectives are authentic. But you got to decide what you're going to extenuate and what you're not.
And so I do want to take a second to dive into Earth Angel's comment in Maya about Haiti, because Haiti did win, but you had
Numbers.
You had the numbers, as you were saying, they outnumbered the French, so it was an easier victory.
Yeah, and you got to remember that Napoleon Bonaparte, he said this shit is too far away. We can't defend this. How long would it take us to send word back to France that we need more troops and for them to rally those troops and get them here? You got to remember the Louisiana Purchase. Napoleon, people of Louisiana and major parts of the United States, they ought to push for Toussaint L'Ouverture to have a national holiday. Because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have French Louisiana.
So when we're looking at our ability to defeat them militarily, you're saying that we must always make sure we count the numbers and see what type of war could we realistically win.
Yeah.
Now, when we did the show a few months ago, and we had the pastor from Black Madonna, and he said that they fought the police to a standstill. What's his name again, Doc?
Albert Cleage.
Albert Cleage.
Yeah, he's Pearl Cleage, the great writer and playwright. That's her daddy. She wrote the brilliant book, What Looks Like Normal on a Crazy Day. Yeah, that's her daddy. Have you ever read the book Black Christian Nationalism? I was talking about it earlier with one of our young professors who dropped by my office. That's his book, Black Christian Nationalism. The Shrine of the Black Madonna, that's their thing.
We're going to have to do a show on that.
On what, Black Christian nationalism?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to cut that one open.
It's definitely a very interesting take on Christianity.
Definitely. Doc, do you think that even when, because at this point when he made the knock on midnight speech, that talk, I don't know how long he's been in it, but I would gather that he's been in it for a minute now. And you would have to tell me, because I don't know. I don't think that, or do you, or could it be? It could be that because he's meeting with the president of the United States, they're calling him on the phone, and he can reach out to do these things. Do you think that kind of clouded his judgment on the things that he could actually do beside the things that he can't?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because King is kind of in the same bag that A. Philip Randolph was in with FDR. Randolph tells FDR, what we need you to do is to ban discrimination in the wartime industries, because if Black people pay taxes and those taxes are being used to fund the war, how unfair is it for Black tax dollars to be used by companies who discriminate against them? And FDR says, and I know JFK said this. I'm not so sure if LBJ would have, but FDR tells Randolph, he basically tells him, he says, listen, I understand that y'all want a ban on wartime discrimination, but if I do this, the Southern ministers will filibuster at a level where nothing will ever make it through Congress or the Senate or the House. Nothing's going to make it through. So for the sake of the nation, I can't do it, even though I agree with your cause and what have you. Randolph's response is a unique one that hasn't been heard since William Monroe Trotter cussed the president out in the White House. Randolph says, okay, if you are not going to do that, ban discrimination on the wartime industries, we're going to march on Washington. And they're marching for jobs. And FDR blinks and signs Executive Order 8802 because he has a fear of losing the propaganda campaign to the master propagandist called Adolf Hitler.
Break that down, Doc. How do you connection? That how could he think Hitler would make him lose the propaganda campaign?
Well, I mean, you have to think about it. America takes the moral position on everybody throughout the world as if they ain't got no shit going on in here. Okay. So if you got Black folk who are marching on Washington, Black folk who are serving in your military, in a segregated military, you can't forget that the U.S. military is segregated all the way through World War II. It's not desegregated until Truman needs Black votes, and then he desegregates the military. Okay? So here you have Adolf Hitler doing what he's doing with the Jewish Holocaust, the African Holocaust. Okay? A general Holocaust against humanity. Not just Jews were being killed. And here you have a nation that is pretending to have a moral superiority and needing to come in and do something against this genocide happening against humanity. Yet at the same time, look at how you do your own citizens. Adolf Hitler would have probably said, at least we kill the Jews. You torture Black folk.
True. Christine Williams says, Dr. Francis Quest Wellesley, we Black people do not see the war against us because we don't want to. We are afraid. We are engaged in behavior designed specifically to block any awareness of the war. Doc, did Dr. King realize that we were at war?
Yes. But the war that King is talking about is a war of good versus evil. It's not a war of black against white. And you have to always filter that through with King. King has some nationalist tendencies, but they're often muted by his Christian faith.
So then his Christian faith was...
He's a slave to Christ. Let's just be clear on that. King is a slave to Christ, yet he's still a flawed individual. He's still a man. He's still subject to the same weaknesses and impulses of any other man, but he tries to be a slave to Christ. That's coming first.
How do you, I'm trying to wrap my mind around that one. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to. So are you saying, Doc, that, okay, let me just say, you break that down in a common everyday way.
Break what down?
When you're saying because he's a slave to Christ and our people are going through what we going through, yet to me, I'm getting that what you're saying is that his response that he should have had wasn't there because he's a slave to Christ.
No,
like,
that's not what
Christ,
I said.
Okay, break it down. Break it down.
See that, white Jesus, I did not say that. Do not want your auspicious judgment to come down on me. This is something this Negro said. Okay, I did not say that. What I am saying is that when you use the term our people, you're talking about black people. For King, our people is the body of Christ. So what you would see, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said it this way. He said that if you have a man who has a heart problem, you give him heart medicine. You don't come in there with no general medicine for him. Black folk had a self-esteem problem. So a figure like Clarence 13X came in and offered this super nutrient saying the black man is God. For King, when he's talking about our people, his people, he's talking about the body of Christ. Now, some of the body of Christ is actually black folk, but some of them are white folk as well. And that's why when you're talking about the Poor People's Campaign, King is planning on bringing white kids to DC, to putting a white face on the poverty. Because if he can put a white face on the poverty and get people to really flow with that, black kids will be saved as well.
Wow. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Do you think that's a proper way to? That's the proper way to. And I go back to what I believe either Mayat or Earth Angel said, that he was only 39 at that time. When he was killed, he was 39 years old. So it wasn't like he had time and knowledge to make, better decisions. Everything to me, and you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, but everything for him was, on the job training, you know.
But you let's be clear on this. King's development is accelerated and increasing exponentially from 63 all the way up until that bullet silenced him in 68. He is a much different thinker, much different believer. He's not naive in 66, 67, 68. He realizes that he's dealing with unregenerate evil. And that unregenerate evil is most often expressed through a white voice, a white body. King understands who he's dealing with, that these people would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven.
Wow. We're going to go and look at Bayard Rustin. Look at his video and come back and chat about it.
It was limited to three things only: the right to vote, the right to use public accommodations, and the right to send your child to school of your choice. It had nothing to do with the North, fundamentally. It had only to do with the South, and it did not address itself in any way to the economic and social problems of Black people. That is the reason it's such a different movement than we have today.
Is that why it succeeded? Because
it succeeded because its objectives were very concrete and exceedingly limited. But when you get into the question of full employment, hospital care, the nature of work, medical care, then you are no longer talking about civil rights.
even so, shouldn't it have enormous lessons for us because it was successful?
No, I don't think any of the lessons of that period are applicable to now.
You just destroyed my show.
Well, I don't think so. Well, I think there are some lessons if we start where I start. And the first lesson is don't try to repeat what you've done because we're in a different period. That's the first lesson. Second lesson is that protest is no substitute for the ballot box, which we have now. When we didn't have the ballot box, protest was the logical way. Once you have the ballot box, protest is useless. And the fact is you cannot get Blacks into the ballot box. A third of the Blacks who can vote go to vote. That's our problem.
Isn't it critically important for people to understand, though, that the movement was not just leaders, but it was individuals?
Oh yes, it was that's the reason we are not succeeding now. We got hundreds of thousands of people voting with their feet. Now we cannot get them to use their feet to go to the ballot box. And therefore there is not the involvement of hundreds of thousands of people today. We're depending on rhetoric and a few people in the Congress to solve our problems for us. But I think it was sparked largely because, as I say, on the one hand, you had this frustration building up for 9 years or 10 years on the part of these veterans who had come home. And on the second hand, you had Rosa Parks armed with a 1954 decision. And we had never had anybody who sat in the front of the bus before who could say to the bus driver, you are breaking the law. The Supreme Court has decreed. And always before they said we were breaking the law. That made a totally different psychological atmosphere.
All right, so that was Brother Reston. So, Doc, what do you think about what he said?
He's correct.
You believe protest is useless?
I don't consider it useless. I believe that we have to attack this enemy, land, sea, and air. Every way that we can issue an attack, I think that we need to issue an attack. But your protest may bring attention to something. Your casting of a vote, especially at the local level, is probably the most powerful thing that one could do, because you're really setting the stage not only to put someone that is like-minded as you in the office, you're impacting what would be even the basic questions that one would be able to ask going forward. You know, one of the when I worked for African American News and Issues, I had to vet all these political candidates that wanted the black vote. And if African American News and Issues endorsed you, you got the black church vote for sure, because the paper was given out free in black churches. Kim Ogg, who is the Harris County prosecutor, Kim Ogg comes in and she wants my endorsement. And she said this to me. She said, "You want me as the prosecutor because I'm the one that discerns and determines what the charge will be, or if someone will be charged." I have a very good friend who used to be a judge. And lo and behold, 3 of my students wound up in front of him. These 3 morons were arrested, caught with guns in the car, ski mask, tape. Okay. They didn't make it 20 minutes down the road before they got pulled over by the state highway patrolman for speeding. Now, clear sign to me that they weren't really serious about what they was doing. They were begging someone to pull them over and stop them. They end up in front of my friend. I'm sitting in my office, doing my office hours. Phone rings. And he says, "Hey, Doc, look, check this out. I got so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so in front of me right now. Are they good people?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they good people. Stupid as can be, but good people. Trying to find their way." Now, what could have probably been 15 years in prison turned into about 300 hours of community service. That's the difference between being able to call the judge or the judge to call you. You putting your man downtown in office and keeping him there. That's what voting can do for you. It can change the tide. Whereas a reactionary, emotional expression to God bless Tamir Rice, God bless Freddie Gray, God bless all of them, Eleanor Bumpers, but an emotional outburst after they've been murdered does absolutely nothing but possibly reduce your blood pressure and your sense of frustration. And I yield, brother.
Excellent, Doc. And Malcolm talked about this with Christina Williams. Christine Williams says that We don't need civil rights. We need what every being needs is human rights.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You would think Dr. King knew the difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah, King is talking about human rights all the time. You know, he agrees with what Christine Williams said. Yeah, and you got to remember, human rights are many steps above. They're the umbrella over these puny things that we call civil rights.
So just a few. What are the human rights so people can understand what are the human rights and what are the civil rights?
Your right to exist on this planet is a human right. To live on this planet and to not be, to have your life threatened and removed. Civil rights would be something that would occur like the let's say the Voting Rights Act, where they're going to issue protections for individuals to be able to cast a vote. Okay, that's cool. But the larger protection is to have dignity, to have freedom, to have a semblance of justice available to you. Those are human rights.
Now, is the right to free speech human or civil?
It would be the right to exist is a human right. The right to speak should be a human right, but it's codified within the First Amendment of this nation. But it's not, and you have to remember, most lands and most people, they don't make it up to the idea of human rights. They're struggling and fighting for just civil rights. They can't even begin to comprehend the idea of human rights because they don't have basic civil rights. The right to breathe, the right to not be killed. Some people don't have those rights. And one could argue many Black folk don't have them because they still killing us.
A right to education would be human right?
It is a human right, but it's also a civil right. It's a civil right. You have to think about an umbrella. And there are things that fall up underneath that umbrella. And think about another umbrella underneath the first umbrella. And there are certain things that fall up under it. That larger umbrella, that's human rights. Okay. That smaller umbrella, that you have the right to go and vote without any interference. That would be a civil right. But it's still under the larger umbrella of human rights. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, Doc, I know I've said this before. The Constitution ain't gave me a right. I was born with these rights.
So you're talking about human rights.
Human rights.
You're talking about human rights there.
Now, did the so-called founding crackers, did they uniquely how they wrote the Constitution and said, now you have these rights, but you already had the right. The paper didn't give you the right. Your God gave you the right when he allowed you to come to birth.
But you got to remember what the founding fathers are reacting to, who they're addressing. They're addressing the crown. They're addressing the British. That's what they're responding to. It's not like they just sat down to create this document. Mm-hmm. No, we need to have freedom of speech because they didn't allow us to have it. We need to have political representation at both what? As far as our population and in regards to your existence as a state. You weren't allowed that under the crown. They're responding to the crown. It's in many ways a direct message to the crown. Okay? That's what Jefferson's talking about when he talks about that all men are created equal. He's talking to the British. He's not thinking about black people. Black people are not a thought with the U.S. Constitution. They talk about slavery. Okay? We're not a thought, really. That's a conversation between an upstart young nation and Britain.
So, in other words, the crown over there was oppressing their ass. Then they fought to get free and to come and oppress our ass.
Well, I mean, you got to remember that chattel slavery predates the founding of this nation. We were already enslaved before this nation was founded. Okay, the nation isn't founded until 1776. The first half-free black folk that arrived here under European control is 1619. So it's been going on for over 150 years. And read some of the language that they have. These colonial leaders, they're not equivocating. They're not measuring their stuff. They're saying we will not be the slaves of Britain. Yet they expect for us to be their slaves.
Wow.
That's them.
Wow. Now, I wanted to deal with, I'm going to come back to what Mr. Dolphy just wrote, but I want to deal with what Sister Cassie, and peace and blessings. Welcome to the program, Sister Cassie, Realm in the Bush. Welcome. Says, but if we have a movement cannot be jailed, cannot be killed or jailed, but a movement can be hijacked. A movement can be taken over, redirected. And you know, we look at the term woke, you know, we used it for our satisfaction, and now the damn crackers done got it, and it means a whole total new different thing. So just as simple and easy as they hijacked a word, they can simple and easy hijack a movement, right, Doc? Well, what's your thoughts?
Without a doubt. I mean, you see it happening repeatedly. I mean, go back since we're talking about King, go back to King's March on Washington riff, where he's talking about, I have a dream, you know, where little black boys and little black girls. Well, that's been seized and taken over. Now you have those who would have opposed King using his words, twisting and turning them to fit their own agenda. They're basically saying, if you're talking about affirmative action, you're talking about reparations, it's you black bastard, that's working against Dr. King's vision. We're the ones who are saying a balanced playing field, no benefit to each other. So you got to be careful. They will hijack a movement and redirect it. And keep in mind, even nonprofit organizations can have their message curtailed by those who give money. He who gives the money gets to call the tune.
You know, Mr. Dolphy said that we were enslaved in the Caribbean before here. Hell, they would season the slaves in the Carib before bringing them to America. Well, when did the slavery start in the Caribbean?
Oh, you have to remember that the British mainland colonies, they're one of the last, okay, to be formed. Look at, you know, when you look at America, what's the oldest city in America? St. Augustine, Florida. Wasn't a British colony. Okay? So in every way, the Caribbean slavery, it predates, and you have to think about how much sense it would make, because you're going to hit the Caribbean with this nice climate before you hit North America or even South America. Caribbean slavery was horrible. Our people were seasoned there. You got to really think about that. They were in many ways shocked by what they were experiencing. We have letters to emphasize how bad Caribbean slavery was. We have letters from wealthy white women who are complaining about the stench that is coming off of the ocean at their favorite sun tanning spots along the beach. What is that stench they're complaining about? Dead black bodies.
What?
They would just throw them into the water after they were dead. If you made it to be 25 in the Caribbean as a male, you were an old man. They worked them to death because they were easily replaced. They just bring in another shipment. It's what it is.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I
We're
mean,
gonna have to do a
you
program on that. I gotta
Yeah.
write that one down.
gotta- you have to think that the majority of stolen Africans that are under white control, they go to the Caribbean. And think about how small the Caribbean is as a landmass. The second amount go to Brazil. And the distant third is going to be the continental U.S. to the British colonies. I mean, I can show you a video in 2 minutes that would emphasize those amazing numbers, man. You know, it's astounding when you think about how many went into a relatively small landmass called the Caribbean.
Wow. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a program on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it this way. Even the first parcel that made it into Jamestown, they didn't come from Africa. They were in the Caribbean. And what are they growing in the Caribbean? Sugarcane. Okay? It's going to be converted into rum. These unlucky gentlemen happen to be on a ship that pirates are going to commandeer. And they don't want them. So what do you do with them? They sold them to Jamestown. In Jamestown, the British don't know what to do with these quote unquote people. So they come up with the most oxymoronish term that one could ever come up with. These men are not enslaved. They're half free. Can they sue? Can they sue in court? Yep. Can they win? Yep. So the creation of American chattel slavery is one that, to be honest with you, is a dynamic story that nothing can be taken for granted.
So how the hell are you gonna be half free? Either free or you're not.
No, because if you're half free, you're able to sue, you're able to make money, you're able to have contracts. Okay.
So break that. What does that look like? Half free. What the fuck does that look like?
You have limited rights. You don't have full citizenship rights, but you got limited rights. You can't be abused. You can't be economically exploited. And what it is actually they're trying to get and build the slave system. Okay? Because you have to remember who has more protection during the system of American chattel slavery, an enslaved African or a European indentured servant. Who's got more protection?
Yeah, the crocodiles.
No. No,
Huh?
the enslaved individual does.
Wait a minute. You saying the slave got more security
Yes,
over the indentured cracker?
yes.
Oh, you're gonna have to break that one down because I don't see how that is. Because they can whoop your ass, they can kill you, they can do anything because as they say, this is my property. Indentured servant ain't somebody's property. They just dealing with you on this time frame because they brung you to the new world. So now you got to work back your debt. So how is that less secure than person can walk and bust you in your mouth, do whatever the hell they want to you? If you're a woman, take you and rape you, that's my property.
But you're answering your own question. Think about it this way. If you're a enslaved man and some whites in the city decide they're going to just whoop on your ass that day, and they whoop you and they harm you to the point where you can't work anymore, your owner can take them to court because they damaged his property. These are property crimes that we're talking about. You get what I'm saying?
Well,
Versus the indentured servant. Okay, if you are an owner and you have a quote unquote slave who's going to be with you forever, and you have an indentured servant who's going free in 3 years from this moment, and you have a dangerous job that needs to be executed, who you going to send up to do it?
the indentured servant.
There you go.
But that's two different things though. Because
No.
if look at the watch, if you that same example you use with
Uh-huh.
the slave getting beat up,
Uh-huh.
he would if the indentured servant
No.
got beat up.
No. You stick with the one I just used. Why did you send the indentured servant and not the slave?
Because the indentured servant is only with me for a shorter period of time. So I'll send him on the most dangerous job because if he get killed, that ain't no real big iffy. But if
Yes.
the one that's with me for life get killed, then I'm losing some big money now.
Exactly. If the slave is beaten and harmed, you're going to sue and you're going to receive some compensation for that. Okay? Consider the protection that enslaved Africans had versus free. If they kill a free African, what happens? Nothing. Because he's nobody's property.
Mm-hmm.
This nation is about property crimes. Okay? If an indentured servant is beaten, which would probably be rare in this nation, not much is going to happen. Because the injury that you suffered is not significant. Versus if they killed your slave, you're missing out on not only his production, but any children he would have produced, their production as well.
But I think even if you have an indentured servant and he get beat up and can't do the work, I think the slave owner will sue even on that behalf because it's still preventing him from getting his full value from the indentured servant.
Mm-hmm. I hear exactly what you're saying. But if a judge was to look at that and to say, well, we'll pay you 3 years of what we think he would have produced versus an enslaved person, you're going to have to be paid for a lifetime in regards to what it is that he would have produced. Ira Berlin wrote a great book, if you want to read it, Ira Berlin's book is titled Slaves Without Masters. And he's talking about that free black population in the South. They have no protection whatsoever. They're more likely to be lynched and killed than anybody. Enslaved Africans, it's not the same. Because if you harm them, you're harming someone's property.
Man, oh man, these damn devils. We're going to look at Ella Baker, another clip on Ella Baker, and come back and have a more conversation on that. On
Okay.
her.
Okay.
Let's check her out. Whoops.
Perspective, the student. As an editor, I came to it a little bit skeptical of King because I had more of a SNCC perspective, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was critical of King for coming in and bring the media to these small rural towns in the South, and then, speak at a rally and maybe take part in a march. And then he and the television cameras would leave, and then the people in these rural towns would be left to fend for themselves. Like other pastors, he was a great mobilizer. King didn't know a thing about organizing, but he, more than anyone else, as they say, put more warm bodies on the streets than anybody else in American history. Somehow he thought that his preaching would be enough to change people's lives. And it was enough to get people started changing their lives, but not enough to keep them going. So you need the community organizers there. So he experienced for the first time through Ella Baker, Bob Moses, and others, what community organizing really meant.
Friends, brothers, and sisters in the struggle for human dignity and freedom, I am here to represent the struggle that has gone on for 300 or more years, a struggle to be recognized as citizens in a country in which we were born. I have had about 40 or 50 years of struggle, ever since a little boy on the streets of Norfolk called me a nigger. I struck him back. I had to learn that hitting back with my fist one individual was not enough. It takes organization. It takes dedication. It takes the willingness to stand by and do what has to be done when it has to be done, and have to make the fight for freedom every day in the year, every year, until they win it. Thank you.
A big part of his legacy was saying, yes, we've got to have marches. We've always got to have rallies, these big events to get a lot of media attention. But that's never going to be enough. What's even more important is the day after day, continuous community organizing so that communities will actually have power to control their own destiny.
We are honored to have Dr. Stuart Burns as a guiding force in our groundbreaking MLK Legacy Series Masterclass program. Dr. Burns is not just a scholar. He is a living testament to the transformative power of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. He is more than an accomplished academic. He is a witness to history, dedicated to passing on the torch of knowledge to the next generation. Don't miss this unprecedented opportunity to be inspired by the transformative power of history. Enroll today in our masterclass program, Simmons College of Kentucky.
Okay, there we had a little clip. It's amazing to me how this cracker is so-called a master teacher of Black affairs. How the hell is that? Ain't no damn way. Ain't no damn way. But back to our sister Ella Baker. Now, Doc, when she says she struck her, I'm taking that as she struck a white boy who called her a nigger. Am I correct on that?
Sure.
And what happened to her? Did she get beat up? Did the crackers? What did they do?
Nothing that the history. I haven't read anything in the historical record that would tell you what happened. So I would argue nothing.
Mm. She seemed like she was a no nonsense type of woman. Who, she didn't sound like she was one of these turn the other cheek niggas.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So why is it that really I think you're the first person that I've ever heard talk about Ella Baker.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't learned nothing about her in school or nothing. So why is she so hidden?
You know, the thing is that we like to tell stories that are condensed, linear, that make sense. The entire civil rights movement is basically reduced down and packaged very nicely into a couple events. You got the 1954 Brown case. You got Rosa Parks on that bus. You got Dr. King at the March on Washington. That's not how it happened. That's not what's going on, to be honest with you. And I think that you intuitively know that, but it's hard for people to really grasp that and say, well, there had to be more. And if there's more, how do they go find out about it? You look at a Randolph, you look at a Charles Hamilton Houston, you look at a Baird Rustin. They've been silenced because they were openly uncloseted homosexuals. Okay, they would have silenced James Baldwin as well, but Baldwin talked too much. He can't be silenced. Ella Baker, she's not a public speaker. She's the most critical linchpin portion of every movement. She's an organizer. And now I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there is a part of me that really says that Black folk are sort of marginalized because they've never heard of Ella Baker. They don't know her story. And because they don't know her story, they don't really understand that being an organizer is a crucial prerequisite to any movement. So we don't talk about these figures. We do a lukewarm history lesson, and that's it.
Do you think that we've lost a lot by not teaching us more about Ella Baker and her contributions and what? Because did anybody pick up her mantle after she, passed on?
No, we don't have organizers within the Black movement anymore. Not like her, who were content to just be organizers. Everybody wants to be in the front. Everyone wants a mic in front of them. They want the cameras flashing. If I didn't know any better, I would say that there's some Negroes who basically wouldn't have a problem with the continuation of Black oppression if they weren't allowed to be in the limelight. We have what John Henry Clark refers to as Hollywood revolutions now. Lights, camera, action. Nobody wants to put in the work behind closed doors. And that's what Ella specialized in.
You remember, of course you remember, Mother Rosa Parks. And you remember when she was in Detroit and her house got broken into by those Black teenagers? And she was like, I'm Rosa Parks. And he's like, bitch, we don't care who you are, and that type of thing. How do you lose the reality of who you're robbing? I mean, who you're, beating up? This is Rosa Parks. And this is how you're going to treat her.
You allow ignorance to become the predominant trend amongst your people. You talk about Rosa Parks, I'll raise you a Huey P. Newton. Huey P. Newton was killed in the street by a common street thug. Didn't care who he was. Didn't care what he had done for our people. It's just what it is. You know, when you are not reinforcing, you are not teaching, you're not pouring into succeeding generations. I use this quote all the time, but because it's so powerful. Grand verbalizer Funkin' Lesson Brother Jay from X-Clan said, ignorance is not a trend. All you need is one generation to be ignorant and you're sunk, because you'll never come out of that ignorance.
Wow. You know, Dr. King and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad met. Dr. King went to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's home. We got a video we're going to show where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is talking about his meeting with Dr. King. But before we go there, Doc, I want to ask, you know, how important is it that you have a secure circle around you? Because when you have Dr. King speaking out against the Vietnam War and, you know, black preachers starting to turn their churches off to him, and the enemy begins to see those around you who want to be the next Dr. King, but want to do it in a way that they work with, you know, the White House or whatever. How do you protect yourself from it? How should King have? Was King, you know, not wise to who he had around him?
Ask that question of Jesus. If Jesus was not wise enough to have 12 cats that had his back, what chance do we as humans have? So it isn't anything the King did wrong, but the reality is that the fame and the pursuit of fame is intoxicating and irresistible for some people. You got to remember, the greatest betrayer of Dr. King is Ralph Abernathy, his best friend. Is Ralph Abernathy, who puts in his book about King's multiple affairs to sell books. Oh, hey, the Lord
Now,
was betrayed.
Do you think he's the biggest enemy to King besides even Reverend Kyles, Billy Kyles?
Yep. Because there are certain things that best friends should never talk about. The man is gone. The man is dead. Protect his legacy. You don't have to denigrate him. And then the fact is that Ralph Abernathy is the one who said that Martin must have known it was coming. Because last night after we had dinner, he said, Ralph, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to take over SCLC. And of course, the other minister said, Ralph, you's a goddamn lie. Martin didn't tell you that shit last night.
So was there an internal struggle? Who gonna lead SCLC?
Well, certainly.
Wow.
They're all Baptist ministers. They all feel they should be the one in that limelight. And unfortunately, the eventual leader of SCLC is Martin Luther King Jr.'s son, Martin. And he did nothing with it.
Do you think his children betrayed him? Betrayed their daddy?
I don't know if I would use the word betrayal, but they're disappointments to him. Without a doubt. I mean, come on, they're fighting in public about selling the man's Bible. Who in the world would sell their daddy's Bible? And he was a preacher. But they want that money.
Mm. Wow. You know, Christine Williams says, you know, Jesus all powerful, all knowing, etc. But he hasn't ended mistreatment and subjugation of non-white people globally. Why?
No one knows the ways and the thinking of the Lord. And just have faith. And ultimately, in the end, Sister Williams, it all works together for the good.
You know, Doc, I think that it's not Jesus' job to free us from captivity, but it is our job to free ourselves from captivity. Is that not true?
I would agree. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Grudgingly, I would agree. Because I know that Christine Williams and Earth Angel are out there.
Yeah, we got to take the bull by the horns and just make it happen. We got to do it ourselves.
Faith without works is dead.
Exactly. You know,
But wait on the Lord. That's what as well. So you justified in either way you do it.
Realm in the Bush said, David asked, shall we pursue? And he said, yes, and you shall recover all. He's waiting for us, and we're waiting for him. When will we move and do what he commanded us to do? I know that's right. We got to go ahead and do what needs to be done. Somebody check Doc's temperature, please.
You know what?
You all right, Doc? Making sure you're okay.
We're gonna come up with a power ranking of the least liked up in here. Earth Angel and Christine Williams, y'all tied for second behind Brother Isaiah. Check my temperature.
All right, well, we're gonna go to this. We're gonna check out this other video. We go because time is rolling, and I want to go ahead and get through this through the night. I want to get through this. So we're moving into the death of a king, and let's watch this clip, and we'll come back and discuss it.
I was at the trial.
Oh Lord.
I want to show you all quickly, explain to you why that jury of 6 blacks and 6 whites after 3 hours came back and found that white boy guilty of conspiring to kill Dr. Martin Luther King. And they went further than that. They also said there was some co-conspirators, black folks, unnamed, that was involved. I want to show you a little 3-minute clip of the minister that Dr. King was going by his house for dinner. He was due at 7, but they had to move it up for 7. It'd be a little too dark to shoot somebody. So they moved it to 6 o'clock. 2 years ago at a press conference in Memphis, I get a call. And they said, so-and-so is thinking about killing so-and-so, so-and-so. I said, what? Said, well, he said something at the press conference. I said, put him on the phone. I said, whatever you do, get that film. Because once NBC realized what this brother could slip and say it. we will never get our hands on the tape. What you fixing to see now went into the evidence in the King trial where they brought a wrongful death suit, and I'll explain that to you quickly in a minute. But what you fixing to witness now is the man who came by to get King to take him to dinner. And 30 years later at a press conference, he slipped because God do baffle your mind sometimes. You look,
some of the activities are geared especially for the young who did not have a chance to get to feel or to know what the civil rights movement actually was about. Even as they marched, now they could have stopped in a hotel, but when you think about marching from Memphis to Jackson or Jackson to Memphis, that was a hotel. You stayed in churches, you stayed in people's homes, and that's how we got over, that's how we got through. The struggle was a spiritual struggle. You couldn't pay people to do what we had to do. You couldn't pay people to stand before mad dogs and fire hoses and billy clubs and cattle prods. It was strictly a spiritual and moral movement. So we wanted that dimension to be in the pilgrimage to Memphis. We will revisit the mountaintop speech site. That's the Mason's Temple, where Dr. King made his last address, which he almost didn't make, because the night that we were having that rally, there were tornado warnings, and he was behind on the Poor People's Campaign. And he said, you guys go on over and have the rally. I'm going to stay at the motel and work on the Poor People's Campaign. When we got there and Dr. Abernathy walked in and Jesse Jackson walked in and I walked in and others, people started clapping because they thought Martin was behind us. And so Ralph's preacher sense said to him, this is not our crowd. And he went to the phone and called Dr. King. And that any of the marches that we had in those days, you have an opportunity to bring the children and bring the family and march with us. And when I finished sharing with them the last hour of Dr. King's life, no hurry, but that gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour on earth. 3 preachers in a room, Abernathy, King, and Kyle. And we spent that last hour together in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel. The press is always curious, and writers, what went on? What did you talk about? I say, we just talk preacher talk. What preachers talk about when they get together.
y'all pay real
Revivals
attention
and all
to
the
what
like.
you're fixing to hear now.
About 5:45, we walked on the balcony, and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away, so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out.
Thank you.
I turned around and then knocked him back on the balcony.
Listen. Oh. Wait, listen. Listen. 30 years later, this brother never realized he would slip and say that. Do you know what happened when you're sitting in a jury room about a conspiracy and this piece of film is introduced? He stood here, I stood here, only as I moved away so he could have a clear shot. The shot rang out. Okay. This was the brother that he was going by his house for dinner. To my brother Matty, you will have a copy of this tape. I'll get it back to you. And what you should do is make copies. See to it, because this is a very valuable. And y'all need to send this tape to people all over this country. so this was the trial that went on that the press didn't want to report because they couldn't. Huh? They couldn't. And so we have to stop getting mad and upset because the same system that's killing us refused to tell us the truth. You have to use your own given God.
So there you have it. You saw in the video where Reverend Billy Kyles confessed, in my eyes, to being a part of the conspiracy to kill Dr. Martin Luther King. He clearly said it on MSNBC, as you saw for yourself, where it says, we were standing together, and as I moved out the way so that they could get a clear shot, the shot rang out. Pow! The conspiracy to kill Dr. King, his own men, friends, a part of it. We lost Doc, but Doc should be coming back shortly. This is real. This is real. This is something that has to be dealt with. Now, Reverend Billy Kyles died in 2016. He was confronted about that over and over again, but he just played it off like, you know, I misspoke. Nigga, you ain't misspoke. Your ass is guilty. He's guilty. And just like the photographer, I forget his name, but he down there in Memphis with Kyles too. He dead now. They figured out he was one of the boys because he was getting paid by the CIA or FBI to be their snitch. They were announcing the hotel room where Dr. King stayed on the radio in Memphis. They was announcing the hotel room where he stayed at in Memphis. Normally, King would stay at white hotels. And at the last minute, they changed him to a black hotel. Who made the change? Who made the change? Jesse Jackson received $1 million after King was killed. He did something with the money, and people in the government was trying to come after him about where's the money at. And he got away with it and got more money. But people got paid. People sold King to the enemy. Doc, what you think about what you just saw?
You know, that was the first time that I had heard that brother, seen video of him talking. I'd heard that story before, but to see video of him talking. Now I understand why you were asking me if Abernathy was the biggest betrayer of King. I don't believe he misspoke. There's no way you could ever tell me that King or JFK, that their assassinations were lone wolf situations where some citizen just took it upon himself to do that. You don't get that close to these individuals without it being orchestrated. So, you know, I feel horrible for it. And my thing is, quite simply, how do you live with yourself, knowing that you were a part of that? How? And I yield.
Exactly. That's man, oh man. You know, we got two more videos. We're going to look at his funeral, and then we're going to look at the trial that was done. Christine Williams says, teach truth, justice, and correctness every day until RWS racial, I'm assuming racial white supremacy, is eliminated and replaced with a system of justice, balance between people. You know, I would say this to that, which is you got to teach the people the truth, but you got to motivate them to action. You got to motivate them to action. Because if you're not motivating them to action, even though they know the truth, ain't a damn thing gonna change. We got to motivate them to action. Remember, the damn FBI Hoover, he said the rise of the Black Messiah will motivate them to action. So if you just teach, but you're not motivating them to do the things necessary to make the proper changes, nothing ain't gonna change. They're gonna know the truth, but shit ain't gonna change. So we gotta motivate them. Racism, white supremacy. Okay, thank you. So we got to motivate them to action. Motivate them to action. We don't want you just sitting at home on the couch listening and don't change nothing about your life. We want action. We got to have action. Because remember, it is action that got us in this situation today. It was action. Words with action got us in this situation today. They were determined that this is what's going to be done. We got to be not just as determined, but more determined that it ends, it's over with. We have to be always motivated to action. With that proper action, we'll heal our people. We'll have justice. We'll have justice because we'll take justice. Look at it. Just like when Senator, what that cracker name? Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. He went to the New York City amongst our people in the Black neighborhood, poor Black folk, and said, you know what? I like more of what Malcolm X said. If you're a man, you don't beg nobody for justice. You take it. You take justice. Now, for Rand Paul to go to the ghetto up in New York City and tell a bunch of Black people to be more like Malcolm X, don't ask another man for justice. You take it. I got to find that clip of him saying that. It was on the news. But you got to wake up to your responsibility to take it. Let's watch this next part.
Mrs. King has requested that we have the tape of his last sermon played to us now. We all think about it, and every now and then I think about my own death, and I think about my own funeral, and I don't think of it in a morbid sense. And every now and then I ask myself, what is it But I would want to say, I leave the word to you this morning. If any of you around, when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long queue. And if you get somebody to deliver the unit, to tell them not to talk to you. Every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the walk. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. That's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word for him, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, if I can bring salvation to a world once lost, if I can spread the message as the master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side. Not for any selfish reason. I want to be on your right or your left side, not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition. But I just want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and in commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world.
As an editor, I came to it a little.
Well, I think he did have a life serving others. I think he fulfilled his eulogy, I believe. What do you think, Doc? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
There's no doubt whatsoever that he had a servant's life. I have no doubt that when he did approach his Lord, you know, those words, very good, my true and faithful servant, were said to him. You know, Dr. King gave his life to the struggle, you know, and it's not just a black struggle. He gave his life to the struggle for working class and poor people, regardless of race. He's always talking about economic redistribution. He's talking about justice. He's talking about dignity. You know, no doubt he gave his life, you know, and he is that drum major that he's talking about.
Now, and I understand he used that drum major example often. What was that all about? Why did he choose that?
I mean, you know, the drum major is the one that stands out in front of everyone else. He leads the way. He's going to be directing the way, setting the tone, setting the tenor for the struggle. And that's who King was. And one could argue that's who Malcolm was. That's who great leaders are. The drum major is the leader. And, you know, scripture tells us, to whom much is given, much is required. fits King perfectly. King was given a privileged upbringing. King really did not have to do any of that to live a superb life, but he honored his calling, and he made great use of the talents and skills that he was imbued with by God.
What do you think if Dr. King was alive today? How would he see Black America?
I think that he would consider it the best of times and the worst of times. And if you go back and you look at the Boondocks episode, The Return of the King, I believe that's what you would have seen from King if he were addressing the worst of us.
Interesting. I haven't seen that episode.
You haven't seen The Return of the King?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh man, you're slipping. Slipping.
You're correct, Christine. She says Dr. King did all he could do, but he has passed the baton on to us. That is so correct. It is in our hands now, and we got to take it to its rightful conclusion. We have to take it to its rightful conclusion.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
So there, and I don't know whether many people are aware of the trial that they had, the King family versus Lord Jowers and some unknown or unnamed co-conspirators. Lord Jowers was the white boy who had the restaurant where the gun was supposedly put in there, left by James Earl Ray. Well, he was on his dying bed thinking that the cracker going to heaven, so he wanted to confess his sins. So he confessed that James Earl Ray didn't have nothing to do with it, that it was, in fact, parts members of the United States government and the mafia that got together to commit murder to kill Dr. King. And this trial was held in Memphis, Tennessee. And so our next video, we're going to look at that and, come back and talk about it. But this court case didn't get any really real news coverage, nor the verdict didn't get any real news coverage. But there's so many dirty hands in the murder of our brother. And if it could happen to him, it can happen to anybody. I'm still tripping on how these crackers believe in a magic bullet theory. That still got me like, say, what? You really believe in a magic bullet? The fuck out of here. And Doc, I don't know. I don't understand how white folks ate that shit up like it was a new thing since sliced bread. A fucking magic bullet. Doesn't make sense to me. But they ate that shit and accepted it because the government said it's a magic bullet. It's a magic bullet. That should have been revolution right there. But those who say they love America really don't love America. That's evident. So let's look at that, and we'll come right back and have a discussion of it. Doc, you found the Boondocks? Because after this, we can watch that too.
Yeah, I found the episode. You want to know what King would say to those of us who are not pulling their weight? It's right there.
Okay.
Most everyone knows that Dr. King was a courageous Christian minister, committed to the nonviolent pursuit of freedom for all people. In this pursuit, he went to jail 29 times. Nothing new so far, but prepare yourself for some stunning surprises. James Earl Ray, a petty criminal who died in 1998 and who, according to the official story, shot Dr. King, in fact did not shoot Dr. King, even though he pleaded guilty in 1969. That's right, James Earl Ray was not, absolutely without any question, not the killer. This footage of Dexter King shaking hands with James Earl Ray speaks volumes. Dexter and the other members of the King family have persevered ever since Dr. King's death to learn the truth about what happened and to make that truth known. They are convinced Ray was not the shooter. Ray's guilty plea comes about on the advice of a lawyer who approaches Ray and offers to represent him. It turns out this lawyer has connections with the true killers. The lawyer tells Ray that a guilty plea will make Ray famous and help him get off with a light sentence. Always easily led, Ray writes out what he's told to. And by the way, it's a guilty plea, not a confession. These facts are found in a book just out, the best single book on the assassination, An Act of State, the Execution of Martin Luther King. On the basis of the guilty plea, Ray is sentenced to 99 years in prison. Ray realizes he's been duped. 3 days after arriving in the penitentiary, he moves for his guilty plea to be set aside and that he be given a trial. But stalling by government officials denies him that for the rest of his life. To his dying day, he insists he did not kill Dr. King. Pepper's book includes a full account of the extensive civil trial into Dr. King's death, held in Memphis, Tennessee in 1999. That there was such a trial may be a surprise to you also. The family's suit names as defendants co-conspirators. The trial is not about money. The family seeks $100 damages. The trial is about the truth. The trial lasts almost a month. 70 witnesses are heard. A jury of 6 black and 6 white persons takes just 1 hour to arrive at a guilty verdict against, quote, the co-conspirators consisting of the named defendant, Lloyd Jowers, and those that the defendant named in his response, namely the United States government, the state of Tennessee, the city of Memphis, and Memphis Police Department, James Earl Ray, Earl Clark, and Frank Liberto, unquote. Earl Clark, now deceased, was the top marksman in the Memphis Police Department. Frank Liberto was a mafia kingpin. Conspirators within the U.S. government, according to the trial and the book, include, quote, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, Richard Helms and the CIA, and the military, unquote. The reason all this information probably surprises you is that the mainstream media effectively boycotted the trial. As Pepper writes, the silence following these shocking revelations was deafening. Like the pattern during all the investigations of the assassination throughout the years, no major media outlet would cover the story. It was effectively buried. Just 6 of the many facts that come out at the trial. First, when King arrives in Memphis, he's taken not to his usual hotel, which is safe for him, but rather to another, and given a room he must reach by an exposed balcony readily visible from dense bushes behind Jim's Bar and Grill across the street and from various high vantage points. Second fact, a special security unit of black officers assigned to King on all his previous visits to Memphis is told it's not required this time. Third fact, defendant Jowers, former owner of Jim's Bar and Grill, admits to receiving and storing a gun the day before the killing, being handed a still smoking gun the day of, and disposing of that gun. Fourth, U.S. Army snipers are positioned on 2 nearby rooftops and a water tower, not, as you'd expect, to protect King, but to back up the assassin in case he misses. He does not. Fifth fact, New York Times reporter Earl Caldwell is in a room close to King's. He comes out when he hears the shot. He and others testify for the trial that they saw a man crouching in the bushes behind Jim's Bar and Grill. This man cannot be James Earl Ray. Reliable witnesses see Ray leave the area before the shot is fired. Fact 6, The day after the killing, early in the morning, a city works crew is sent to cut down and methodically remove the bushes and all debris from behind Jim's Bar and Grill. The order comes from the Memphis Police Department. Whoever killed King, it was not James Earl Ray. He could never have coordinated such a plan or assembled such a task force, and he wasn't at the scene. He is the fall guy. But the trial, in effect, is boycotted by the media. That's why you don't know about it. That's why I didn't know about it until 3 months ago through James Douglas. King recognized that powerful economic forces stunt history and kill hope. It's important to understand that these powerful forces now include the mainstream media. To study Dr. Martin Luther King's nonviolent quest for social and economic justice as the surest foundation for peace is to recognize him not only as a civil rights leader, but as a man of the hour, even in these troubling days. King's life and death remain important news.
Who believe the same that
All right, so his trial, well, not his trial, but the trial that they put on that showed that the U.S. government is guilty with those other unnamed conspirators of what they did to Dr. King. What's your thoughts, Doc? You're mute.
I'm on the camp. Still mute. Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm of the camp of, I know it was a single shooter. I know there are multiple people, government agencies involved in this. You don't kill a figure like King as a lone wolf. But I like to see all the evidence before I sanction and indict everybody that has been listed. I just like to see the evidence. I'd like to read the transcript, watch the trial for myself.
Definitely. I think that one of the greatest or the greatest enemy that we have to deal with is the U.S. government. They have been monstrous in their dealings with us. And, I don't believe that they have any good within them for us. And so that's why we have to do things totally different. Which video is it, Doc? Because there's like 2 or 3 different ones on here.
It's the one that says something about his speech.
Oh, okay.
Should be at the top.
Yeah.
Excuse me, brothers and sisters, please. If someone could just turn off.
King looked out on his people and saw they were in great need. So he did what all great leaders do. He told them the truth.
Will you ignorant niggas please shut the hell up?
He just said what I think he said.
Is this it? This is what I got all those ass whoopings for? I had a dream once. It was a dream that little black boys and little black girls would drink from the river of prosperity, freed from the thirst of oppression. But lo and behold, some 4 decades later, what have I found but a bunch of trifling, shiftless, good-for-nothing niggas? And I know some of you don't want to hear me say that word. It's the ugliest word in the English language, but that's what I see now, niggas. And you don't want to be a nigger, because niggers are living contradictions. Niggas are full of unfulfilled ambitions. Niggas wax and wane. Niggas love to complain. Niggas love to hear themselves talk but hate to explain. Niggas love being another man's judge and jury. Niggas procrastinate until it's time to worry. Niggas love to be late. Niggas hate to hurry. Black entertainment television is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Usher, Michael Jackson is not a genre of music. And now I'd like to talk about soul playing. I've seen what's around the corner. I've seen what's over the horizon. And I promise you, you niggas have nothing to celebrate. And no, I won't get there with you. I'm going to Canada.
I'm going to Canada. I'm going to Canada. Wow. Wow. What do you think? In his speech, he says, you know, I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but we as a people, we will get there. Where is there, Doc?
Liberation, freedom, justice, human dignity.
Do you think that King was really dedicated? Because the only way to get those things that you're talking about, that we're talking about, is going to come through a fight. Do you think that he would sanction or be in agreement at some point with the fight that has to take place?
Once again, I think the King's idea of a fight would be good versus evil. He would argue that we're fighting all day, every day already. Now, as to him sanctioning a physical head-to-head war, I don't think King would. I don't think he would see it that way.
Interesting. All right. You agree with the Boondocks thing where King would denounce the niggas?
Without a doubt, I just shit. I wish he would have done one with Malcolm. One with Malcolm. Malcolm would have probably showed up with the FOI and whooped everybody's ass at the party.
Oh, definitely. We got work to do.
Most
We
definitely.
definitely have work to do. Doc, you want to give your closing comments, your closing thoughts?
You know, man, just happy to be here. Best way to end my first week back at work. I enjoy y'all. You know, even Christine Williams and Earth Angel. You know, I enjoy y'all. And I don't think that y'all are as bad as Brother Isaiah. And I yield.
Yes,
Love you
sir.
all.
Love you too, Doc. Hey, you know, Isaiah want to debate with you. He really think he can defeat you in a debate.
I mean, it's turned into an obsession. You know, everywhere I go here on Facebook, everywhere. You know, I just believe that this space and spaces like this should be utilized to illuminate the minds of our people. We look like fools when we get on camera and we just argue with each other about something that ain't worth arguing about. You know, this space has got to be more sacred than that. It's got to be more adult than that. It's got to be more forward thinking than that. And that's really one of my major problems with the whole situation. You know.
Definitely, definitely. We definitely have to do that. Um, my take on Dr. King is that, I love the brother. I believe that he gave his all for the rise of our people. I think he just miscalculated with the degree of evil that we were dealing with. And I believe he began to rectify that and they put it into his life. But I love the brother, very much so. And understanding where he was, I don't think it's necessary for us as a people at this point to go back to where he was. I know, I believe his name is Reverend Barber, big brother who believes in, who's leading the Poor People's Campaign. Those days of protest are really over. They're over. We got to be able to assess this thing differently. It's no longer sitting, please, 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 I want to beg this, beg that. Man, fuck that. You wasting your goddamn time. All you doing is making police richer by putting more money in their pocket by giving them overtime. That's all you're doing. We need to stop the foolishness. And this level where we at now, we have to put our own people, Black first people, in those elected seats. We have to take power, and then we rule it the way we decide. See, we have to look at this thing through grown-up eyes now. We understand the power of the ballot. We understand the power of getting in those seats. Then once we get in those seats, then just as Hugo Chavez got into power and his people reelected him to power and American government, they did a coup and took his ass out. It was the regular everyday people that rose up and said, you better put my president back in there or we're going to tear this shit up. It ain't going to be nothing for nobody. And that's how Hugo Chavez got out and regained his presidency. A few years later, he went to the UN right after President Bush spoke and said, I smell sulfur here. The devil was here. Called President Bush a devil. And it wasn't too long after that, next thing you know, the brother died with cancer. Goddamn cracker got it. So when we get in office, y'all have to make sure that we stay secure so the cracker don't get us. That's what our job is, to make sure that we put the rightful Black first people in office and we do the things necessary. This is the revolution. This is our mandate. Begging and crying and all that pleading bullshit is over with. And when it comes to whooping ass, trust and believe, it will be whooped. It will be whooped. So as we always say, oh, and don't forget, join us Sunday at 4:00 for our program at 4. We will be on, I'm not sure of the topic yet, but it will be a good one. Promise you that. Christine says, war is not about military might because they own all the weapons. Our work has to be following the logic and working to get effective numbers of people who speak the truth and change of behavior. Excellent, excellent. Realm in the Bush says, exactly. That's what Black folk need to do until they do what need to do. Black folks need to do until they do what we need to do. I'm quite sure Sister Cassie explained that on Sunday. But we love you all. We thank you all for joining us and staying with us for over 2 hours. I know we're over our time limit by 34 minutes, but we thank you all for maintaining with us. Brother Mr. Adofi, please take care of your flu so you can be reporting on time on Sunday at 4:00 and be a good commenter like normal, because we all put together and put in our input that makes the show greater. And we thank you all for doing that and ask you to continue. So as we always say, you kill the nigger in you, I'm going to kill the nigger in me, and our God will reign supreme. We are Black first, today, tomorrow, and forever. Love you, family. Peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.
So you better get the message and get it straight. You're going to need some bridge work. It's simple as that. Because we're living in judgment. We're living in implementation.